Welcome back. In my last class, I introduced you to competitive precision pistol shooting. Now, you don't, as I said before, you don't have to take it up competitively. You don't have to do it in a formal situation. But the skills that I'm going to teach you starting today will give you all the ability to shoot any form of handgun shooting whatsoever. We're going to start, first of all, by inoculating you from a very serious virus that's going around. Now, you can pick it up almost anywhere. You can pick it up in publications. This is it right here. You notice this is what the virus looks like. You see the sharp rear sight, sharply defined, and then you see the sharply defined target with scoring rings around it. And it's called a sight picture. Take a look at that virus. All right, now I'm going to show you, here's another example of it. It's widely, it's spread all over the place. So here's a publication from my old Model 19, and you'll see right there's an explanation. This is what the virus looks like. Sharp sights, sharp front sight, sharp rear sight, and sharply defined target with scoring rings. Let's bring it up under a microscope so you can get a really close look at it. You can see it right here, enlarged. So you see that you've got the sharply defined rear sight and the front sight and the target. And if you ever see that virus, get away. This is what the antibody looks like right here. This is the correct sight picture, and by the numbers you see here, your front sight is in sharp focus, your rear sight is clearly defined, and your target is somewhat blurry. All right, let's talk about this now for a moment. You know, we're created by God to have a vision which can focus precisely at different locations, at different focal lengths. If I were to place my thumb here close to me, it's sharply defined as I look at it, and if I move it farther out, my eye reacquires it, and then farther out it reacquires it, and then farther out it reacquires it, and so forth. And if I look across the room, I'm looking at a different focal length. And so if I place my thumb here and I'm looking at my wrinkled knuckle and my cuticle, that camera does not look really in focus. I can see the camera, I can see it clearly, but it's not in sharp focus. If, matter of fact, there's a screen there where I can be seen, and right now I can see my thumb very sharp and clear, but I can't see myself. I can see my green shirt, and I know that I'm there, but I can't see myself clearly. So you might say, well, that's a problem, because if you're trying to score X's and you can't see the X ring, then how are you going to hit it? Well, let's talk about the mechanics involved with shooting. Sight mechanics is very simple. You've got a front sight and a rear sight, and the critical alignment of those, it becomes ever more critical as the sight radius is reduced with a handgun than it is with a rifle. Every bit of dispersion or irregularity between the alignment from this front sight and the rear sight causes wide dispersion downrange. So much so that just a couple of thousandths of an inch difference in alignment back here can cause inches downrange. Think about that and keep that in mind. Thousandths of an inch back here will result in inches downrange. There's nothing about your target which is going to attract the bullet downrange. There's nothing about the X-ring that's going to attract the bullet to it. The only thing that controls the bullet is that gun barrel and the alignment of your sights. The bullet originates from your gun. It has to be directed by the gun to the target. Now, as you noticed, let's put that good sight picture back up there. Again, you'll notice that the front and rear sight is in sharp alignment. Now, that's probably a little bit unrealistic, because if you're really looking at the front sight, if you're really looking at this front sight, the rear sight is not going to be in exactly the same sharp focus. On a bright day, it probably will be. If you have the sun up there on a bright day, you probably will be able to acquire absolute sharp front and rear sight, because they're fairly close together. But on most days, you're going to have to work hard to get your eye to see past this rear sight and gaze at that front sight and get that front sight in sharp focus. And the reason why the front sight has to be in sharp focus is because if you're working at getting that one in sharp focus, you most absolutely will get this one. This one's going to fall into place, because this is the hardest one to get in focus. Your eye is going to be attracted by that target, because it's just natural to say, gee, I want to see that target. If I want to hit that target, I got to see it. But you got to get yourself out of that frame of mind. Sight alignment, sight alignment, sight alignment. That's absolutely imperative. Understand that you cannot possibly hit the target that you're aiming at. That, you know, you're gonna miss all the time. Whenever I had students on the line, you know, this happened hundreds of times. Whenever I had students on the line, and you know, I would coach them first of all on the bullseye target, and we'd get squared away. They'd be shooting nice, beautiful groups, and they'd have that sight picture beautiful. And you know, after they worked at that for a couple of weeks with the K-22, the K-22 was basically a very similar gun to this Model 19, but it was in a 22 caliber. But they would work on that, and they would hone their skills in, and they'd have nice tight groups. They'd be hitting this bullseye right here at 50 feet on the indoor range at the police station, and they'd be in the black all the time. Well, then they'd take their 38s, and they would start blowing groups like this at the same distance, 15 yards, 25 yards, and shots off the paper down at the bottom range of the paper. And I knew immediately what they were doing. They were attempting to see that X-ring in the middle of that big B target, the silhouette police target. Well, that's because their eyes were attracted by that image downrange. They wanted to be able to see the X-ring in the middle of it, see that X-ring, see that 10 ring. They wanted to be able to gaze at that and shoot towards it. And as a result, the groups would bloom, and they'd be all over the place off the paper. Now you'd say, well, how can they possibly miss a target that big, you know, at only 15 or 25 yards? Well, very simple, because that's how critical sight alignment is to shooting a handgun. Then, you know, we'd work at it, and I'd recoach him, you get him back on the line, have working on that sight picture, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, the guy who was shooting a group like this suddenly was shooting groups like this. And he went from shooting like a slob to shooting a sharpshooter or expert. And in a couple of cases, I had a couple of people who managed to attain a distinguished expert because they kept working at it. Now, anybody can do that. The problem that most people have shooting a handgun is the misunderstanding that they acquire from such pictures, such images as this, that are called sight picture. That's an impossible task for anybody's eyes. A camera can't do it, and our eyes cannot do that. So I want to leave you with that, and in my next class I'm going to talk about area aiming, because there's another problem that's associated with that sight image that I want to talk about and to dispel. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and God bless.